All right, everyone. It's 7:05, so we'll get things kicked off here. I'll keep admitting people as they join. But thank you for taking time out of your schedules tonight to join us for our virtual maker panel, and welcome. My name is Adam Ackla. I'm the programming administrator here at CoLab, Eau Claire's co-working community. I just want to take a second and mention Creative Economy Week, which is kind of why we're all here today. And it's celebrated statewide this week each year. Creative Economy Week celebrates the creative movement in Wisconsin. In Eau Claire, we're fortunate to have a vibrant local creative economy that we all contribute to, whether as producers or consumers. This week showcases and explores creative endeavors and processes within the community. We welcome you to join in the conversation and participate in the programs that make Eau Claire a creative destination. In Eau Claire, Creative Economy Week is organized by Downtown Eau Claire, Inc., the Eau Claire Public Arts Council, and various artists, creators, business owners, and entrepreneurs. For more information, including some great local content from our area's creative community, you can find Artful Eau Claire on Facebook. I'll also be dropping that link in the chat. This is not the first time that we've hosted a panel like this during Creative Economy Week, but it's the first time that we have done this virtually. With the current situation, we've had to make a couple pivots with what our plans were for Creative Economy Week. So this is one of them, is doing this virtually. A couple logistics before we get started. We have some preset questions for our panelists that we'll be asking them. But as we're going through those, feel free to drop your thoughts in the chat. The chat will be open for everyone to use during the panel. So if you have any thoughts or anything, feel free to drop them in the chat and keep that conversation going. After the questions that we have, you as the audience will have the opportunity to ask questions of our panel. All you'll have to do that is open up that participants tab located on the bottom of your screen and click raise your hand. I'll watch this and unmute you in the order that you all raise your hand. We are trying to aim for a stop at about 8:30 tonight, so just to be respectful of people with kids and everything. So just be conscious of that as we're moving through the Q&A, and try to think of questions that are general enough to appeal to the diverse audience that we've really gathered here tonight. We're also recording this panel, so we'll send out the link to attendees afterwards. So if you can't take notes right now, not a big deal, just sit back and enjoy it. So now that we've got all that boring stuff out of the way, I'm so happy to introduce my co-conspirator and the reason that this panel has taken shape, Miss Becca Cooke of Red's Mercantile.
Cool. Hi, everybody. Welcome, and thanks for joining us tonight. So my name is Becca Cooke, and I own Red's Mercantile. We're a home goods and accessory shop here in Eau Claire. And we work a lot with makers, and it's something that I've been passionate about, hosting this panel and working with so many different folks through the years. And I think a lot of the conversations I have with folks, I walk through people on an individual basis with a lot of these questions. Folks come in the store looking for feedback on pricing and how to get into little shops and all that good stuff. And so this was kind of originally started as a resource for people to answer a lot of those questions. And it's morphed over the years. And I think it's a really special group of folks tonight because they kind of come from all different walks, and not just with the perspective of being an Eau Claire maker, an Eau Claire shop owner, but there's folks from across the state and even from Chicago that are joining us tonight. And so I'm going to let them go ahead and introduce themselves briefly. And I think we could all talk forever about the work we do, because I know everybody that is a part of this panel is very passionate about the work they do. But if you can kind of sum up, what your startup story is, and what it is that you do now, and maybe even some of your background that might be relevant, even if you've worked in retail for a long time, or you've done kind of like a path to get where you are. I think if you can just share that, just like a 2-minute intro. So we'll start with Mel, since I see Mel right away. Put you on the spot.
All right, sounds good. My name is Mel, or Melissa Koontz, and I am the owner of Naturel. It's a natural skincare kind of body product company, and it's based out of my home. And everything obviously is handmade and shipped all over the country through my website, Amazon, Etsy, and then I have wholesale customers as well. I'm in about a dozen brick and mortar stores. I've been in business since January of 2017, technically, when the LLC was registered, but I had been doing some stuff in 2016 as well. I started the business really off of a need for myself, for my own skincare. I started making my own products. I have polycystic ovarian syndrome, so I had really bad hormonal acne, and I was trying to figure out how to fix that and cure my scarring on my face. And so I had been dabbling with different things. Also had super like thin eyelashes and was trying to grow those and didn't want to use the stuff that was on the market with all the chemicals. So I just started making my own stuff for fun. I've always been sort of creative and artistic and art, you know, let's make whatever I can on my own kind of a soul. So I had no intentions of starting a business. I actually didn't plan on it. I was just making it for myself. I had some extra bottles of my eyelash growth serum and thought I would sell them. And one post on social media, I had sold way more than I had and was doing like weekend and nightly pickups and realized, oh crap, I should probably get some insurance. I should probably make this a company. Oh my God, what if someone's eyeballs fall off? Like, it kind of spiraled into a problem, but a good problem. And I was selling them in multiple states and had no idea like that this was going to spiral, but it did. So anyway, that's kind of how it started. But my background is in marketing. And I feel like it's kind of a lie that I'm on this panel because I'm not a full-time maker. So I will just disclose that. When I saw the name of it, I was like, oh, I don't think Adam knows that, but I'll disclose it.
You're running a full-time business, though. You know,
yeah,
I mean,
yeah. And I work full-time as a vice president of marketing and communications for Royal Credit Union here in Eau Claire, or in Eau Claire in Minnesota and Wisconsin. So I work in marketing and love that and have a passion for it. So I think that's really resonated and helped my business as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Mel.
Yeah.
Cire, we'll jump down to you.
Oh, yay. Hello, everybody. I am Cire Cross, and I have a jewelry business, and I have been making, well, jewelry and stuff, I guess you could say, my whole life. I've always been just kind of a creative person. And one of my first high school jobs was at an antique mall here in Stoughton, and I was in charge of fixing broken vintage jewelry, like restringing things and resetting stones and stuff. And when the things couldn't be fixed, my boss would graciously just give me the box of old stuff. So I started making my own jewelry using just like the leftovers, and that kind of snowballed into we had a really great little bead shop here in town too. So I started like mixing in stones and beads and like really gotten into beaded jewelry. And I never thought about selling it until one day a woman came into the store and she wanted to buy the necklace I was wearing like off of me. And then I sold it to her, of course. And then Cabbage River, the place that I worked, graciously gave me a little space in their case to display some of my jewelry. And so that was the first store that I ever had anything in. And I went on to college and I majored in interior design. And I think that's really helped me with the jewelry, just design-wise, because everything like fashion and accessories and is kind of all connected. They all have kind of like the same basics for design. So it wasn't until I left my interior design job that I decided, well, I'm just going to make jewelry full time because I want to be my own boss. And that took off in probably like 2011. So I started doing craft fairs and then got on Etsy and then started to wholesale a little bit and do consignment and got a really awesome studio space in Madison with a couple other metalsmiths. And that's how I turned my beading into metalwork. They graciously let me use their tools and their, to kind of reteach myself how to do it because I'm self-taught. And I eventually was able to get all of my own things and start doing metalwork and really expanding my business and doing it full time. And yeah, so that's how the jewelry business started. And then after I had my daughter 2 years ago, I was looking to move my studio from Madison to Stoughton, which is about a half an hour commute because I just thought like a half an hour is too far to be away from my newborn. So I was looking for a new studio space, and this building came about, and it was just kind of a perfect storm of like, why not like have a space to sell my jewelry at the same time. And as the space was developing, the concept kind of developed too of like, well, I could sell my own jewelry and then I could also be a platform for other makers. So the store turned into home goods and art and clean beauty, all handmade, and then mixed with vintage, which is another one of my passions. So it's just kind of a conglomerate of like everything I love. So I make the jewelry and I sell the jewelry and have a store, and it's all in one space on Main Street in Stoughton, Wisconsin.
Awesome. Thanks, Cire.
You're welcome.
We'll hop over to you. Yeah, you just have to unmute yourself. There you go. Perfect.
The cat part of that sentence.
Oh, sorry.
No worries.
Like looking at you on my screen.
My name is Pham. I'm actually based in Chicago. I am a Midwest sales rep. I work on the wholesale side with an agency called Misanthrope Agency. We have been an agency for about 20 years. So I've been with them about 6, and we represent everything from independent small makers. We've worked with fledgling brands before. We work with 100-year-old brands. Right now, I'm the Midwest sales rep for Red Wing Heritage, Shot NYC, and Schwood Eyewear. And then prior to that, I was on the retail side. So my background is actually in retail, from everything from being a part-timer, sales at corporate, to running an independent shop. I ran an independent men's store in Chicago for 5 years as the GM and the buyer. And so going into wholesale was a very interesting experience because I worked with reps for such a long time, and you really like understand how terrible you were as a buyer now that you're on the wholesale side. So I love it. I think that was the goal for me, to be in the back of house for a really long time. But in addition to that, I'm also a freelance creative, and I kind of just, I design furniture, I fabricate, I'm a freelance handyman. So I do a little bit of everything. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Kat. And we're going to dig more into all of this. This is just introductions. So Kyle, if you want to introduce yourself.
Sure, that'd be great. My name's Kyle LaFond. I'm the founder of a little company called American Provenance. We manufacture natural health and wellness products with deodorants, men's grooming supplies, and then some skincare stuff kind of carrying the day. My whole 30-second spiel: I'm actually a former middle school science teacher, and kind of creative career now, the fact that middle school boys stink. I don't know when the last time was you were in a middle school classroom, but man, those kids are ripe. So basically one day I kind of got sick of my kids wearing so much name brand body spray, took a look at one of the labels, saw all the detrimental ingredients, and thought, wow, this is a teachable moment. So right then and there, I created a lab where I showed the kids, modeled how to make their own personal care and wellness products without any of the harsh chemicals. It was very successful. The kids loved it. I decided to transition it to a business, launched it on my family farm out of an old machine shed that I had renovated. And that was about 5 years ago. Now we're in a new facility, about 8,000 square feet. I've got a small team behind me. You can find our products in about 4,000 retailers nationwide. And we have a really nice e-commerce platform. So that's American Provenance in a nutshell.
Thanks, Kyle. Okay, and last but not least, Nate and Michelle.
Hi, I'm Michelle, and this is Nate, my husband. We are the owners of Pasture Company. We sell handmade and revived goods. The handmade is mainly quilted and chain stitched embroidery on home decor pieces and attire. And we've been in business since 2017. And the business actually started out as Nate's, I'd say. He started out screen printing on flags. And it wasn't until I actually had our baby girl, and she was turning 1. And I thought a cool birthday present for her would be a quilted blanket. And once I made that quilted blanket, it was kind of like game on from there. And I just fell in love with the whole process of quilting and turning it from old grandma style quilting to kind of more modern, something that you could see in a home today or on the wall today or on the back of your jean jacket, something like that. And we have been kind of progressing since then. And we currently are based mainly online, but we do have a studio space located in Eau Claire.
Awesome.
I'm Nate. I've always kind of been a creative as well. I've grew up in a family business. Never had any formal education in business, kind of school of hard knocks, watching my parents do it, watching my grandpa run a business, learning just that way. So I've always had kind of entrepreneurship in my blood, and just tried a lot of different things. And I still think I'm searching for something else or building something else as well. But this is like a stepping stone and a way for us to come together is kind of how it started. We wanted to do something together to be creative, and then I don't know, just try out the idea of even having a business together, because
It can be hard.
yeah, but I wanted to be with my family more. I wanted to be I don't want to say the word home, because I like having a studio space or a place to go, and you're like your own little office or whatever it is, your escape to do your work. But it was something more of my own boss, I suppose. But yeah, it's still growing, but happy with where we're at as well.
Cool. Well, thanks, you guys. We're going to move right into asking some questions, and how this is going to kind of work. I'm just going to popcorn around with you guys. So it's not going to always be the same order, but this is kind of for everybody. I think we've all been at the beginning of something, and when you're just starting out, what was the hardest part? And we'll, hopefully hear from some folks on the call as to where they're at in their process, if they're just starting to really become makers, or they've been, on this road and are trying to figure out how to expand. But when you were just starting out, what were some of the things that you encountered that were challenging? And then maybe some silver linings, some things you learned about yourself. And we'll just round robin, and we have a lot of questions, so kind of keep it light, and then we'll and if folks want to dig in more, we can do that in Q&A. So let's start with Cire.
Okay, so just starting out, well, I had an apartment, and I moved back home with Mom, sold all my stuff, and took my money and decided, like, this is when I was going to work for myself. And I knew that Etsy was a booming thing, and I was on Etsy, but then I decided I was going to take it really seriously. So the hardest part was figuring out how to set yourself apart on Etsy. And I quickly learned that photography, good graphic design, and like shooting lookbooks of your products on people so they can see scale and use was the most important thing. But that was really hard because I had to save a lot of money to hire a graphic designer. So it's just about like not giving up and saving your money and spending it wisely in the beginning.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Kyle?
Yeah, I think the hardest part for me was actually talking myself into the fact that this was a good idea. Of course, as a new entrepreneur, new business owner, the one thing you have to have is a ton of confidence. And the way I got that was this process that I kind of live by, think it, communicate it, do it. So I had the thought process. Once I started communicating to people that were going to be involved with me, with my graphic designer, with my general manager, then things became real. Because once I started telling other folks about the fact that this is something I was passionate about, this is something I wanted to do, and I thought we could be successful at, that's when the pressure was on me. And that kind of lit a fire underneath me to really go out and get it. So just getting my own confidence and then communicating that story to give myself the push that I needed.
Mel?
Sorry. Needed to plug in the phone. No, I just needed to plug it in. I would say the hardest thing for me was figuring out what to tackle first, because I'm a very high achiever, ambitious, like I want to do it all, and I want to do it all now, and I want to do it right. And, I live by go big or go home. And so I, in the beginning, I had these like amazing, grandiose ideas and didn't really know where I was really going to take it. Because, I didn't really plan on starting a business, but once it happened, I was like, I better do this right. So I found interns at UW-Eau Claire and wrote, I want to say 9 job descriptions for the interns, like all the positions that I knew I was going to need. like photography and content writing and social media and a videographer and all these different things. And so trying to figure out what to bite off and how to chew it and how to manage that all while working full time still was probably my hardest part, and just nibbling off what I could take and what I could handle, and telling myself that it's okay if it's not perfect and it doesn't need to happen overnight and it's going to take time, and just let it evolve. I think there's some things that I would have done differently, or that I wouldn't have wasted time and money on had I taken it slower in the beginning, to just like chill and see where it takes me. So that's probably what I learned.
Yeah, I hear that. Pasture Co.
I would definitely agree with basically every other maker out in your product, and getting it past that point in your mind of, can I really sell this? Can I really make money off of this? Will people really like this? I think is such a hard struggle to overcome. And a lot of businesses, I think, even fail to come off the ground because they don't. That was definitely one of our bigger ones.
Yeah, I think to elaborate like what everybody said, especially Kyle as well, it's the self-belief. It's like you get the idea and you're like, man, that's actually a good idea. Like I can see a purpose for that. That matters to me. And then like once you are going to present that to the world or actually make it real, then there's all this doubt that creeps in, and then you almost stop yourself. You do stop yourself, and then there's a period of like you have to have this insane amount of belief in some crazy idea, and then you try to tell your friends about it and then convince them it's a good idea, so that they tell you it's a good idea, and they always don't because they don't see your vision. And then so you have to go back into yourself and be like, man, this is because of me, and you have to do it because you have the belief in it. And then there's a period where you have to keep that belief until something actually happens. And if everybody fails, I call it this, like, I don't know, the gap in between like your idea, starting it, and then like when your first success comes, your first sale, your first whatever, and that first one is, it can propel you, but there's a gap in between when that happens. It could be a month, it could be 6 months, but like keep that belief. And if you can make it through that stretch and get that first victory or whatever, then it's all up from there, because what that feeling's addictive. But people fail in that gap of the self-belief, in my opinion. It's where I've failed.
Adam's clapping on virtually. Kat, do you want to touch on this at all a little bit, just even from your independent work that you do, not necessarily the brand rep, but yeah, if you want.
I can touch on a little bit of both. Just starting off with the wholesale thing, I think one thing that was really difficult for me when I was starting off in wholesale is that you're starting a whole book of business, and you get really excited about your first sale, and it's like your first sale, and it might just be a wholesale order that's $1,000, but you don't really think about what that $1,000 translates into. And so you're spending a lot of time in your first couple of years just building that book of business, building those connections, and really cultivating those relationships. And that's the most important thing to do as a rep. You're cultivating relationships with your buyers, but also with the brands, because you want this to work out in the long run. You want it to continue on developing as a relationship and not just be a one-time buy. And I think that's something that is very difficult for some reps to remember. I know it was very difficult for me to remember in the first couple of years, because you're just like, great, I'm just gonna get all of these orders in and then call it a day. But sometimes these small orders turn into big orders, and sometimes or big orders are just that one-time big order. So you do have to maintain that book of business. In terms of being a freelance creative, Chicago is definitely known for being like a place where everyone's got a guy, and somehow I just became certain people's guy. I don't really know how it happened. I definitely have to say, power of social media, power of representation. There are not a lot of people that look like me that do what I do. And so it's very interesting. And I have to remember to not be too shy about showing what I do, because people really do believe in you, and they talk about you and they tell other people about you, and they're like, oh, I know this person that does something. And so again, in that sense, once you make that introduction and you meet these people, you again still have to cultivate these relationships to make them long-term relationships if you want to stay somebody's guy.
Yeah, I hear that 100%. Awesome. We're going to move into like some nitty gritty stuff. So I know this is a piece that I'm talking with makers and helping people kind of figure out, like, even just like coming in my store for the first time, like I've had like college students come in and try to sell me stuff, but have no idea what to price their goods. I'm like, okay. And I think that's a really hard thing. And I've talked to a lot of folks. I have other friends that are makers that, you know, pricing and valuing your work can be a difficult thing sometimes, especially when you're doing that yourself. So can you talk a little bit about how you arrived at your price points, and and how did you decide to sell on like a wholesale or consignment based? And before I hop in, like, I know before, and I think Pasture company has sold on consignment basis before. And so just kind of walking people through with how you got to figuring out what your price was going to be. Okay. So like, and what your just retail price was going to be, first of all. And then you can kind of talk a little bit about maybe what your wholesale is. And maybe actually we'll start back with Kat, because I think with a pricing component, you might have some like interesting stuff to say just around Red Wing. And it being like a heritage item that is a higher priced and higher end item, but like, I guess talking through that a little bit and thinking about, just how you market that value to people too.
There's definitely an educational aspect of it. I think, your common consumer, someone who is used to buying from big box or corporate retailers and things like that, they're not, because that it's so inexpensive or it's just readily there, they don't really have to do the research into finding out what it's made out of, what the backstory is. And so when you're selling a brand that has a heritage story, that has a maker story component to it, that story is part of the package, and that story is built into the pricing of it. So when someone looks at a Red Wing boot, not knowing what a Red Wing boot, not knowing what the history of Red Wing is, they see a $360 boot and there is sticker shock to it, but you break it down. And I think, I do this less as a rep, because most of my buyers are very, they're educated on their own stores, they're educated on brands of what they want to bring in. My job is to definitely help them in selling the product. But when I was working at the retail level, you are educating your consumer as to why the sticker price is $300, $400 for a boot. You tell them about the history, you tell them about, how it's made, the manufacturing process. All of those little details are very, very important. One huge thing that I'm always talking about is care, how to care for your boots, because at that price, this is something that's supposed to last you 10 to 20 years with proper care. So as a rep, I support a lot of my retailers with events, doing care events, showing their customers how to care for their boots and things like that, doing demos. And it's something that's, you don't really think about interacting with the things that you own, but a Red Wing boot isn't just something that you own, it's something that you wear, it's something that you carry, that carries you from place to place. And so you develop a relationship with it over time, and you see it age and patina over time. And so those are all the educational aspects that really, go into why prices are the way that they are, why this boot, why it has a certain value, and that value never goes away.
Yeah, absolutely. So Rhea, I think we'll jump over to you, and I guess moving from where, like Kat isn't setting her prices, but is educating people about them, and you are setting prices for work that you are of stuff that you're making. And I think, when you were starting out, we're pricing things, and can you just talk a little bit about that path and to where you are now?
So when I was first starting out, I think I didn't really know what I was doing or how to price my work. I had a budget for buying supplies, and I did some pretty simple math, what is the cost of making this? And then, you know, marking it up a couple times, and that would kind of be my selling point. And I would look on Etsy and I would look for kind of like similar type things or size or maybe some beads and just see like what other makers were selling. So I was doing a lot of like price comparison in the beginning, which is an okay way to start. But as you grow and as your skills progress and as you learn things as a maker, same with that Red Wing boot, you know, the process and the design and your time and the materials, and just the fact of your story is all connected to the pricing of it. So when I first started out, my pricing was lower because it was I was new at it. I didn't have the skills that I have now from doing it for 15 years. And I was doing consignment. And as I moved into wholesale, I really had to rethink my pricing, because wholesale obviously is great for a maker because you're getting one lump sum in one order, and that's awesome. But you really have to make sure that you're also making a profit. So the way that I think about pricing my jewelry is materials and my time. And I have to set my time, like what are my skill set and my techniques and like my unique vision, and just like Cire, what is my time worth? And I kind of do like an hourly scale. So I take my supplies and my hourly time, and, you know, and I double that, and that's my wholesale, and then I double that, and then that's my retail, so that I make sure that I'm making money even when I'm wholesaling, because you can't stay in business if you're giving away your work. And like with the boots, people who follow you and like your work, and as your work grows and as you do it more, people are definitely willing to pay for that story and the fact that you made it with your hands. And yeah, you just have to make sure you're not undervaluing your work, because not everybody can do what you do. And I know it's hard for us creatives to think that way, but not everybody can do what you do. And that has value. So you have to put that in your pricing. Yeah.
Mel?
Yeah, so I had a similar situation where I didn't really know what I should be pricing it as. I did some research. I made a spreadsheet with all sorts of different brands that I found, and went on their products and did some research, and just started pricing what I thought would be fair based on, you know, my experience and what I was doing and who I'm selling to. And then I applied for the Red Letter Grant, and part of the interview process and feedback process was, you're way underpriced. Like, you need to price these more adequately. And that was great feedback for me. And I didn't know what the market would bear, and I wasn't thinking globally. I was just thinking Eau Claire at that time, and not thinking, you know, other markets as much as I should have been. And so I adjusted my pricing accordingly. And to calculate really how much I should be charging, I actually did a price analysis on every single product, with every single ingredient, like to the drop, and to the containers and the shipping and the packaging and everything. And just tried to mark it up to a percentage that I thought was fair. And that's what I went with. And I have not changed my prices since I started. And then I do the wholesale, but I don't do the consignment. It's not that I'm against it. I'm more scared that people are going to open the products and play with them and use them, and then they'll never sell. And then it's a disadvantage to the business too, who's bought it, because now you have this crappy looking product that's, you know, half used. And so that's really the only reason I haven't really dabbled in consignment. But for the wholesale piece of it, I just got some like line sheets, and I started looking at them and seeing what are other people charging for their wholesale, and what are my minimums going to be, and how am I going to do minimum orders and first time orders and those types of things. And I haven't changed that. I probably should, but it's been working well for me. So I just do a 50% markup. So my retail is 50% higher than my wholesale.
Yeah. And I'll hop in there really quick, just one really fast thing. So like line sheets for folks who are like unfamiliar with that like concept or idea, it's essentially like, you know, a PDF or it's a visual of all the products that you have. So it'd be like all of Mel's products and would include the wholesale and the retail prices, and it's something that you can send over to retail stores to look at. So it's super helpful when you're going to do wholesale to have something like that. And then for consignment, just so that's kind of clear to folks, wholesale, and sorry if this sounds like patronizing anyway, but just for anybody that's really new to this, like wholesale is you sell a bulk amount of goods outright to a store. Consignment is where you would work, usually it's like a 60-40 percentage, where you'll sell goods, the store will sell goods and then pay them back to the maker. So they're not actually, the store is not actually buying your inventory. So just so that's kind of clear, because I think we kind of jumped into that and I didn't really explain that if that was confusing for anybody. So Kyle, would you like to talk about what American Provenance does?
How long do you have? Holy cow. Pricing is a chore. So like everybody else, I do a little bit of comps to start off with. Thought about our customers, who's going to be buying our products and where they're going to be buying it at. Went to those locations, just did a survey of all the competing products on the shelf in terms of jotting down their price points. Then understood how my products will actually get to the retail shelf, knowing that most retailers in grocery and pharmacy have a 40% markup. And if they're getting those goods from distributors need to make between 20 and 30 points. So right there, you got to kind of do your math backwards, and it'll take me a while to showcase how you do that. And then keep in mind that at some point you're going to run some deals. So you're going to have a 15, 20, 25% markdown for certain times of the years when you run promos. So it can get really complicated really quickly. But kind of the best thing that we did, we started at the front. You know, if we price a product at, let's say $7.49, what does that mean for our retailers to buy that through the wholesaler? Then if we cut a deal, is that price, does that still cover our acceptable margin? Do we still have enough meat there where we're making a little bit? And doing the math backwards, I think, is probably the best way to go. And I'm more than happy to showcase how to do that with anybody. But yeah, it gets pretty complicated pretty quick.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Pasture Company, do you want to share a little bit about where you came to your pricing? And I think, and Michelle, you have done consignment, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Oh, so if you want to talk a little bit about that too, because I think it's kind of interesting. I feel like a lot of makers kind of start out with consignment to begin with because you can't quite always do the volume for wholesale,
Right.
especially if you're like a one woman or one man show sometimes. So
yeah. That is very much us.
Yeah.
We've done both, and I definitely would say I prefer the wholesale over consignment, but you will definitely take whatever you can get. And it definitely comes down to making sure that you are covering your material costs, the time that's going to creating, and just comparison. If you are unsure of what to sell your product for, do a little research like many of the other makers have said, and that's a good starting point for you. It was for us, because we really didn't have a whole lot of experience in it. Same with the line sheets, like we had to do our research in that, and then figure out how to put all that together, send it out. It's all a learning process. Google's great for figuring out stuff that you just don't know about, or asking other makers that have experience.
The best thing is a lot of people are afraid to ask, myself included, like, because you feel, man, if I ask somebody that's already has a business, if I'm that vulnerable and ask them how to price my products, you feel like you look stupid, or you like you don't know what you're doing. But you have to be okay to fail and to learn, because that's the only, and learn, like, fail quick. You know what I'm saying? Like, learn fast. Like, don't take forever to learn. And ask somebody like Kyle, or somebody who's been doing it for a while, or even Mel, you know what I'm saying? Just somebody that has some experience. And I had a buddy, that's how I first started. That's how I learned about a line sheet. Like, I didn't go to school for business or anything. I had a buddy who ran a retail store, and I was just like, dude, I want to start selling some t-shirts or something. He's like, well, you got to have a line sheet, or he just kind of broke it down for me. And then that at least gave me a place to start. And then I started doing research from there. And then I kind of knew questions to ask from there. He didn't tell me everything, but he just gave me little tidbits, and I just was able to learn and grow from there. And you just get a base point, and then trial and error. you test your market. And then like somebody mentioned too, are you thinking locally or are you thinking globally? Because especially with, if you're a creative and you have like, I don't know if you have so if some of your products are very artsy or whatever it is, maybe like where you're at's not your market, what I'm saying? Maybe online is better, so it depends also what you're selling. So there's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah. I think you bring up a really good point too, of just like not being afraid to like reach out and ask people. I feel like a lot of folks think there is just like this secret sauce sometimes, or there's like a secret for like how to run a retail store or like how to do, and there isn't really, there's some secret sauce, but there's also just not, there's like, this is what I like, there's some very practical things that I think you would be surprised if you reached out to people, even in your vein, even like a natural care, like industry person or another jewelry maker, like people are open to doing that kind of stuff, of just like answering questions. And so I would encourage anybody, I know anybody in this panel will do Q&A, but like additionally, if you have like very industry specific or very like product specific things, like you shouldn't be afraid. I think that's a very intimidating thing, but that's a good point. It's okay to be vulnerable for that. Moving on, our next round of questioning, packaging. So if y'all want to talk a little bit about how you arrived upon that, I think packaging and branding kind of go hand in hand. If you want to talk a little bit about your logos and that kind of component. But what the process was like with that, if you did it on your own, if you worked with someone, if you designed it yourself, and kind of where maybe you sourced like your paper from, or your, actual goods, like, if it was like Uline or bulk apothecary, or like where you kind of got your stuff to do it too. So we'll start with Pasture Company. And you're like, well, I guess your packaging, or like your tags, or You
asked about packaging, right? I missed the first part.
Packaging, branding.
Yeah.
We're, first of all, shout out to Patricia, fellow Artisan Forge member. Just want to say hi. I just seen you in here. We're probably not the best example, not to knock on us, but we're very learning.
We're learning.
Yeah.
We are the vulnerable.
Okay. And that's a good place to be at. Like, and maybe some of the things you're learning, like what's not been working out, or like what you need help,
To keep our, sorry to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
To keep our costs low, we had made business cards for one, because we had thought that was the way to go, which maybe it is, maybe it isn't, I don't know. And then we're like, man, how can we just make use of these? So then we just simply, being very vulnerable, just punched a hole in them and hand tied them on there and just tried to make it look, we like vintage and that aesthetic as well. So we just did whatever we could, honestly, and we're still very much in the middle there as well. But we just did whatever we could, because there was so many, you can talk yourself out of anything. This isn't good enough. Then you could buy professional tags and those still aren't good enough. Or maybe they're too good for your product, or there's hundreds of things. So if you're happy with it and it's aesthetically pleasing, I mean, that's a big part of it. And then Uline, for sure, you can source stuff from Uline, and get creative. Go to the art store, and you can if you're making your own product, you can make your own labels, sometimes your own packaging. So
personalization is great. Just from other products that I've received from other companies, like a handwritten note is super thoughtful. I would totally order from another company that did that again, just for that reason. Just even little embellishments on the packaging is kind of cool sometimes. You can go a little overboard, so maybe just make sure it's simple and to the point, but thoughtfulness behind packaging, I think, does send a message.
Yeah.
And something you brought up too that maybe folks can touch on in this new era, it's not just packaging in a store, but even like how you're shipping your goods. If you're shipping stuff out to people, what that process feels like, because it's a little bit different than just grabbing something off the shelf. But,
yeah.
Sorry, Nate.
I think you're saying how it arrives at your home. You're saying how the package arrives is what you just touched on.
I'm just adding on to that, kind of from what Michelle was saying, of like a handwritten note. And so I was just saying, if other folks want to touch on that too, I think that's a good thing to think about as we're kind of giving out advice.
Yeah, I would be, just to add, I would be curious to see, because when you're doing smaller volume, it's real easy it's easier to personalize your stuff. So I would be interested to hear something from like Kyle's perspective, where like you're doing when you're doing volume, like you can't handwrite every note. So it's like but he also has phenomenal product, you know what I mean? So I'd like to know that balance as well.
Sure. Why don't we go next to Kyle? Why don't you let?
All right. Bunch of things to say there in terms of packaging. So I'm Wisconsin through and through. So for me, the biggest point was finding vendors here in the state that do the kind of things that we need. So right here in the state of Wisconsin, you've got Green Bay Packaging. They've given us boxes for next to nothing, which is awesome. And they've even made custom boxes for us for when we ship out a 4-pack of deodorant. Let's see here, Menasha paper as well. They do some gift sets for us. One of those things, Menasha, they're really good at chipboard, which is kind of thinner cardboard for like gift sets and stuff you see in store. Whereas GB, they're really good at corrugated, which is the thicker cardboard that you typically use for shipping. You might be able to see it over my shoulder here, but one of the things we do, we've got logo tape that's got our brand on it. So there's a couple different reasons for that. Number one, logo tape is cheap. So you can pick up, 24 rolls of that will last you all year long for, again, next to nothing. The other thing, if you're shipping to grocery stores or pharmacies, a lot of them have policies now where they won't accept just blank packages. It needs to be branded somehow, either with a logo stamped on it or a logo tape. So that serves a couple of different purposes. And then with labels, we actually use Belmark de Peer to print all of our labels.
Cool.
So I'm really proud to say that all of our packaging, all of our labeling is all right here from the state of Wisconsin. So there's some great resources.
That's
right
awesome. I was like taking notes on that also. I didn't know a lot about it. I feel like a lot of people just think it's Uline and that's it. So that's great.
Can you say the last one, your label company again? Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, that's Belmark de Peer. And
Belmark.
if you need my rep's name, I can pass it on to you. That's no problem.
Yeah, we'll tell later.
Yeah, we're picking up rolls, and again, they're dirt cheap. So all right here in the state.
Thank you.
Cool. Thank you. Kat, do you want to talk a little bit about Red Wing and how Red Wing does packaging? Because that's also pretty unique, I feel like, too.
I think going off of what Michelle had said, thoughtfulness is very important. And so when you're dealing with accessories in footwear and accessories, everything is part of the package. Everything is part of the pricing. Someone buys a pair of shoes or a bracelet or sunglasses. It helps so much when there are additional things that come with it, when there's thoughtfulness in the packaging, whether it's reusable, whether there's recycling aspect of it, whether it's going to help the product last longer. So with Red Wing Heritage Women in particular, our packaging is very thoughtful. We don't have handwritten notes that come with each pair of shoes, but it is a pre-printed note. It is a thank you for the purchase. It is a little, snippet of the story of our heritage. Each boot comes in a shoe bag. Our original logo is on it, something that dates back to the early 1900s. And so it's recognizable too. It's something that when, we launched Women's in 2016, and women's heritage is still a concept that a lot of people don't understand. But when women receive the product, when they see the logo, it's something that reminds them of their fathers and their grandfathers and of American history. And so all those little touches are very, very important. In terms of working with your retailers, what are the extras? What are the freebies that you can give? And I know working with my accounts, when we have marketing tools that we're able to give out with Red Wing, we have bandanas, we have tote bags, we have a Red Wing post, we have a Red Wing newspaper that we do. We have keychains, like all of those things go with our branding. And a recent example, with everything that's going on with COVID-19 and the requirement to wear masks, something that we offered to our retailers was, do you want Red Wing bandanas that you can give out as gift with purchase, so that people can use them as masks. And so it's the thoughtfulness that goes into it. It's how you can constantly help your retailers sell the product. That's always really important in the branding and the packaging.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for letting me interject with my bandana right now.
Hey, Becca, can I jump in?
Yeah, of course. I saw you went to grab some stuff to show us.
Exactly. As long as I'm here in the warehouse. So this is basically our 4-pack shipper. So it's got our logo right there. got the name up front. This just folds up and sent in the mail. When it shows up, it has an insert, which is basically just a story that talks about who we are as a company and how we got started. Then, of course, we include a little sticker as well, made right here in Wisconsin. So kids love stickers. Put them on your laptop or your cell phone or whatever. So there you go.
That's awesome. It's kind of nice that we're doing this at home, or like, I know you're in your warehouse, Cire is in the store, because we can actually show stuff. Where if we were all sitting at middle of an office, yeah, there we've got some Red Wing stickers. Awesome. Where we wouldn't be able to see this kind of cool stuff.
Need those
benefits of quarantine. So, Cire, do you want to talk a little bit about your packaging, both your jewelry and then maybe how you've been packaging stuff to go out in like store shipments too? And
yeah. So I've been packing and shipping jewelry forever. And when I first started out, I was doing really simple, just like recycled boxes, and I had little cards with the earrings and the necklaces and stuff went on. I tied it with a little bow, and I wrote a little note, and it went in a bubble mailer, and it's just like simple and clean. But as like my price point went up, and I wanted to transition more into a luxury brand, the unboxing experience and the branding experience is part of it, and it is kind of what you're paying for. So again, with like those freebies, so instead of a bubble mailer, I went to a box, and I did semi-custom because obviously I'm on a budget too. So I still love Etsy, and I got a bunch of custom rubber stamps made. So I do like assembly line, and I stamp all my boxes with my logo, the mailer box and the jewelry box. I use Moo for my earring cards because they have this beautiful gold foil. And I always buy when there's like a sale because Moo is a little pricey, but I want it to feel luxury. I also use Vistaprint a lot too for postcards, for thank you notes, and each package comes with a polishing cloth and a care card for how to take care of your jewelry, and a thank you note, and a linen bag for storage that's also branded. So it's just, when you're opening it up and you're taking it out, you're kind of going through all these little motions, and it really makes you feel special. So you open your box, and it's got the logo and a little message, and then on the outside of the box, it has, a nicely printed label. I always try to make sure I have those things on straight. I don't have branded tape yet. So we do just a little sticker on the outside with our logo. And then it's just a simple. And then with Dune, and I'm sitting right behind the counter, we do recycled just craft paper bags in all different sizes. And then we decided to do a couple different size stickers, which we get from Vistaprint as well. Just because, again, we're on a budget. We use Nashville wraps for our tissue paper. And that is, again, like branded. Everything is really, Alexandria and Dune are kind of like polar opposites when it comes to color and branding and logo and stuff. So I really try to make sure that with packaging on both of the brands that it feels right, because I think color and branding, and it invokes a mood or kind of a feeling about it. So I just make sure that everything is like on brand, no matter kind of what it is. Let's see. I think that covers everything.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah. It's cool too. I like you guys that are sharing. Like, it's nice to know. I think it's always hard to find like what vendors to use, or like who, like where you get your stuff from. So thanks for sharing like where you get things printed, because I think that's always like a hard thing to figure out, kind of. It's like, where do you go and who does?
And I think the rubber stamp is highly underrated, because there's some really beautiful metallic inks and stuff too. And like I said, Etsy, you can get so many awesome custom rubber stamps made. So I'm like and then you're supporting another small business too. So love that.
Yeah, and you can use it again and again. It's sustainable.
Yes.
Mel, do you want to talk a little bit about your packaging, both, and even too, I think it's interesting how you for makers, how you send stuff to your wholesale accounts too. Maybe talk a little bit about how you sell, or like your packaging direct to consumer, and if that changes at all when you're sending it to your accounts.
Yeah, absolutely. So packaging for me was a bit of a struggle, because I have so many different sizes of products and containers and sizes of the labels. And so I want to say like 16 products, and all of them have a different label. It's more than 16, but like 16 individual type things. And so designing the labels, I had them all custom designed. I designed them alongside an intern, and we sized them and did practice rounds, like, how's this going to work? Finding the right sticker was a challenge for me, because I wanted something that could be, wasn't going to smear and wasn't going to wipe off and was removable. So that way they could recycle and use the container, because some of the containers you could reuse them for something else. So I wanted, I hate sticker residue, and I am one where I like to take the sticker off of things, like if I don't want it on there and I don't want to have to use my glue gun. So I was very particular about that. And then also knowing that the oils and the, you know, the chemicals used, or the natural ingredients used could smear and make that label come off. So that was a challenge for me, but I ended up finding a paper that worked for me, and it's basically like a vinyl removable sticker that I was able to get in 12 by 18 sheets and then have a local printer print for me. And so I designed all the labels and then laid them out on 12 by 18 sheets of paper, duplicate, so that way they manually cut them for me. And so I've since I started, I've been having them all printed at CVTC, Triple Valley Technical College has a duplicating center, and because I worked there when I started, and they've been supplying the paper, keeping it on hand just for my products. Well, now they're in the process of closing down that shop and switching over to Digicopy for all of their print needs. And Digicopy also keeps my paper on stock, so I've been able to print at both. Digicopy is another local printer. But right now I'm in the process of shopping for a new printer. So I appreciate the names as well. So thank you, folks. Because I'm not sure that the pricing, I can sustain that. So, so that was one challenge for me that was interesting. As far as like the containers go, because that's part of the packaging in my business, is making sure that the container is on brand too. Just a few businesses that I've worked with, SKS Bottling, Glass Bottle Company, Bulk Apothecary, like to buy the actual containers. There's a ton of them out there. That was also a big challenge, to find, what do I like? What is good quality? Who's going to have the supply when I need it? And right now, that's been a huge issue for me, is supply. And I know we can talk about that later. And then I also had like bags, kind of like what you had, Cire, with like the you know, craft bags. I've ordered boxes and bubble wrap pieces from Amazon or Uline. I try and use recycled materials whenever I can. And so I use, and I make it known, like in the package, like it's obvious that this was recycled, and it makes them feel good too. I usually try and include like a quarter sheet promo thing with every package that I send out for, you know, individual retail. And then I do handwrite on every single packaging slip that comes in for an order, whether it's Amazon, Etsy, or my website. And lately I've been catering my message, my thank you message, to be like, hope you're well and healthy kind of a thing throughout all of this. And then as far as it goes for wholesalers, so for the wholesalers, I obviously wrap and package everything, but I usually, for when they're first starting with me, I will supply them with a stack of like sheets that they can put out with my product. That's like the little quarter size sheet. So it's small, it's not going to take up too much real estate, but it's enough. It gives them an overview. I also supply, if they're buying my like rollers, I'll supply like a container that will hold them all upright, because I know that I want them to be displayed vertically so they don't spill, those types of things. Right. I'll also supply, depending on what they order, they're almost like spice racks, but they work perfectly for my products, so they don't slide off. I've found some good ones that that I'll send one with, or I'll ask them, you know, is this something that you want? And I just give it to them. I don't charge them for it. And then I'll usually send based on what they've ordered, I'll send like a pricing sheet, because I give them the recommended retail price based on the wholesale price. And I have them review it first, and I'll print it, put it in a frame, give it to them, and they'll put it up and I'll usually supply like a bio sheet that has like a picture of me, my logo, my story, because that helps sell in their stores. So yeah,
very cool.
hopefully that helps.
No, that's super helpful, especially the local stuff, because there are a lot of local EC folks here, and it's nice, I think, especially from a printing perspective, to be able to support like some of the local businesses that are also being impacted. I'm going to move on to, because we have a few questions left. Also, some people DM'd me through Instagram yesterday, so I forgot about that, but we'll get to those questions too. I think we're going to skip through. We kind of talked, I feel like, a little bit about branding kind of with throughout this kind of packaging conversation. So I want to move to how you've been able to like scale up your model, and like what types of, because most everybody here does wholesale. And so thinking about how do you pitch stores? How are you getting your message out, like both from a wholesale perspective and then consumer perspective? For those of you on FAIR, if you want to talk about that, or for those of you that brand rep, if you would like to talk kind of what that is like, or Kyle also works with brand reps and just like what that is like as a brand, and if it's as a maker you ever want to work with somebody so you're not doing the the running around talking to everybody type of thing. So I guess we'll hop around, but if you can touch on each of those things, because I really wanted to get us to talking about the pandemic and just how that's impacted. But I'd really like to talk about just how you pitch stores and how you just market to your customers kind of in general, your wholesale and retail kind of like pivot. And let's start with Cire. And you also have a nice perspective now being a shop owner, what it's like to be on the other side of buying.
So before I had the store, I have to admit that I was really bad at reaching out to stores. I'm still kind of bad. I am I'm not good at pitching myself. So I really let like my social media and stuff kind of do it for me. And because I'm still a one-woman show, I'm okay with just keeping up with what comes in. I'm busy enough to where like I have like a week to 2 week lead time, sometimes 3 during the holidays, and people understand that it's just me. So before, when I was pitching to stores, I had a line sheet. I have a wholesale portal on my own website. And then I also am on FAIR, which is new to me last year. And then before Etsy wholesale.
Can you tell people what FAIR is, just really quickly, like what that platform is?
So it's kind of like Etsy wholesale. If you're familiar with Etsy wholesale, that was fabulous. Which is no longer, because I got a lot of new clients from Etsy wholesale, and I feel like a lot of people who were on Etsy wholesale then kind of moved to FAIR as FAIR transitioned from Indigo FAIR to FAIR, what it is now. So it is a wholesale only website. You can be a maker or you can be a retailer purchasing with net 60 terms, which is lovely for a buyer. Absolutely. So that's how I do wholesale. I'm not doing consignment anymore because I really can't keep up with making inventory. So I just make wholesale orders as they come in, and I fill retail orders as they come in, giving myself, the 1 to 2 week lead time. Is that answering the question? I feel like I'm forgetting something.
That does. And maybe just talk a little bit, then you're like direct to consumer, like, you do a really good job, I think, marketing digitally, and just like how, maybe and we can talk about this more in the next kind of segment, but just like online versus in real life, and folks, if you want to talk about any like craft fairs too, though that's not something we're really doing right now.
Just gonna say that. Yeah. So I started doing craft fairs on Etsy, and that was it. And the majority of my income was definitely craft fairs. I was doing like 1 to 2, 3 every month, and that was a high rate of burnout. So it was really lovely when I started to get accounts for people who would come to the shows, find my jewelry, and then later reach out and place wholesale orders. And that began to kind of take over, where I could do less shows and more wholesale orders, and that was really, really nice. I just market totally digitally. I have like an email newsletter. which is kind of like monthly with Cire Alexandria. It's like bi-monthly with Dune. I blog on both, and then Instagram is huge. My Instagram is like the #1 way people find my products. They kind of can see the brand, they can see the packaging. Makers and retailers and stuff, they reach out to me on there, and then they can email me through my website as well. So, and they can still purchase on Etsy if they're not comfortable purchasing from like a website. So I'm just kind of all over the web, because I feel like the more you are out there, the easier then people can find you. So I just am trying to do, keep up with that.
Awesome. We'll hop over to the Pasture company, folks. Do you want to talk about, because I feel like I asked like 50 questions in one, so I'm sorry. If you want to talk just a little bit about, wholesale, how you kind of like started pitching stores, what that looked like, your process, and then how do you market like direct to consumer?
Well, very similar to Cire. The whole one-man show kind of keeps us from actively going after those wholesale deals, which we would like to continue to do a little more of. But in the meantime, we are just making another good point of making yourself available on those platforms that maybe some of those companies can reach out to you. Connections that way are great.
Instagram obviously is powerful, and then with COVID, everything's going more online. So like craft shows and stuff like that, they're good to be feel a part of the community. They're good to get your face out there, and they're good to break you out of your comfort zone. Other than that, it really depends on your business and where you're at. They're not always cost effective, but they're good for other things. They're good for teaching you other lessons. But honestly, with the way, COVID just accelerated buying on the internet. So it's like the studio space and all that stuff's important, and the store it is important. But even Becca, I'm sure you've seen the difference in, everybody. I don't know. I think the internet's only gonna blow our minds coming up in the future.
Blow our minds. Never better stated. Yeah. No, I totally agree. It's gonna be an interesting few months here, or year, or 2 years.
Yeah.
Mel, do you want to talk a little bit about how you market to wholesalers? I know you're in a lot of shops, so how you've done that, and then just like your direct to consumer marketing also, and just like how, so both how you work with wholesale accounts, which is cool to hear too. I think what you said about including displays and that kind of thing, I think that's helpful for people to get ideas of like, and like testers, and like, I think people always kind of grapple with that of like, do I send that or don't? And what do you give your wholesale account? Yeah, so.
Sure. Yeah, so I do give testers to the wholesale accounts, and I really want to echo what Kat said early on about building the relationship and sort of building that rapport and cultivating that from the beginning. I think that is huge, and really listening to what their needs are and who their customers are, and having an understanding of their consumer, because there might be more products that would sell better because what sells really well in other stores that are very similar to it, who have a similar customer base, and they maybe just didn't want to think about it, but you're trying to help them just as much as it helps you. So building that rapport, I think, is huge. I have not, completely honest, I have not done a great job of reaching out to new wholesalers. They've reached out to me, which is a good problem, but or a good thing to happen. But I also am doing sort of that balancing act where I know that I could make it much bigger and make this into a full-time thing, and have and sustain that and be more in a situation where Kyle is, but I love my day job and my career, and I don't know how I would do both. And so I have been very much teetering a line of a balancing act. since I started, where it's like, okay, if I do this box subscription, or I do this wholesale type of account, or if I try and reach out to too many, now I'm not going to be able to sustain, or I'm really cutting into my profits with the wholesale when I'm making more with the direct 100%, versus the 50%. So it's been a very fine line balancing act for me. And I've had several people reach out, or even large wholesale ones want to reach out, and I've turned them down because the volume is just not something I can sustain without it now being a manufactured product that's no longer handmade. And I hand make every single product, and that's part of my brand. And so it's been sort of this, it's like, I could go and do this, but I can't. And so it's a struggle for me. Let's see. Did that answer all of your questions?
Yeah. And like,
Okay.
well, and then maybe a little to like your direct to consumer marketing.
Oh,
like,
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So social media obviously is huge. Instagram, like you've all mentioned. I've not been great about keeping up with my email presence. I do have some, but it's something that I should be doing more of. And it's funny because it's like the shoemaker's son is the one who has the shoes with the holes in it. Well, I'm like the professional marketing person who knows how to do all of this and should be doing it, but I am, because I'm juggling two big things, it's difficult, right? And my interns, and it is just me, so there's only so many hours in the day, and I'm about to pop a baby out in 7 days, so I have all of these things that it's you build it up, and it's a juggle. So I've not been the best at some of my own pieces with that, and I self-acknowledge it, and I just say it's okay, like I can't do it all.
That's good though to know. I mean, it's good to know that about yourself, of like not just putting stuff on. Yeah, exactly.
I've had to allow that, and that's been probably the biggest learning thing for me, for someone who is a high achiever and can do it. Where are my boundaries? Where is the me time? How do I draw that line? And so that's been a huge thing for me, which has been really good.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll hop over to Kat. And if you want to, I mean, you definitely are going out and target. A lot of these folks have just let people organically come their way. Your job is literally to go out and target stores and work with.
I am definitely a traveling salesman by trade. I'm Al Bundy. I sell shoes. I'm from Chicago. There is, with Red Wing, the way that we work is we have a kit that we essentially travel with. It is our season's top sellers, our new merch, our new styles for the upcoming season. But in our kit is always our top sellers, our best sellers, what we're known for. And so a lot of the times when we're approaching new accounts, I think we are spoiled in the fact that in the Midwest, a lot of people know what Red Wing is. They're very familiar with it. And so we don't have to sell the story. We don't have to sell the brand. What we do have to do is sell how that retailer is going to be able to sell the product. You know, Red Wing is definitely still an aspirational brand. There's a lot of nervousness with a lot of retailers to carry footwear. How much inventory do you have to bring in? You know, it's a lot up front. And so the kit that we travel with, we do our research ahead of time with a lot of our retailers. You know, we know what other brands they're carrying. We know the price points of those brands. And so when we introduce our line to a retailer, we don't show them all the entire collection. It's very overwhelming for people. So what we always start off with, this is the boot that tells our story. This is what we're known for. This is the iconic style that anyone walking into your store is going to say, I know that shoe. And then you build on that. And so you have another top seller or that boot in a different leather. And then you have the new style or the style that you believe is going to fit in with what that store carries. I know, Becca, with your store, you know, we've carried the Harriets and the Claras since day one, and we've never really strayed from that. Last season, we tried out a new silhouette, and you keep it tight and you keep it small so that the retailer doesn't feel overwhelmed, so that your consumer also doesn't feel overwhelmed. But one thing that's really great with being with Red Wing is that we have a lot of leeway into our inventory. And so we constantly offer swaps. We want you to be a long-term client, long-term retailer, a long-term client. And so we're more concerned with, are you going to be able to still carry our brand 5 seasons from now? You know, and we're not that nervous if you don't do that well in the first season. We're still building our relationship. We're still building our brand with you. We're still in the process of educating the customer, your customer base. And so, you know, if a silhouette is not doing well, we take it out of the store and we put in another silhouette, and we offer that confidence to our retailers. And that's really what helps us build on our relationships. And then there's always the additional things that you do. You know, are there marketing materials you can send? Are there displays? Are there events that you can do? We travel to trade shows, multiple trade shows per season. And then what I like to do after every trade shows, I go on the road and I check in on my accounts. And checking in on those retailers, I mean, people love when you show face. And what I love about it is when I get to see the physical store, I can really help with the merchandising. I can really help with the styling aspect of it and saying, okay, maybe those 3 styles that I showed you were not actually a good fit for your upcoming season. Let's swap it out. Let's do a refresh. It also serves a great opportunity to do some product training, because when you are a retailer, you're selling so many different brands and you can't tell every consumer about every single brand. And so it's just a great way to just refresh your retailer and their sales associates on what the brand message is, and just to get people really excited about selling it.
I think especially like being able to go to a shop, I know as a shop owner, when somebody has learned about my store before they send me their line sheet, when you blanket market to people, they can tell when you do that versus when you spend the time getting to know the shop and their vibe and their aesthetic. And especially if you go and have an in-person, you know, just walk through of like getting to see what the look and feel of a shop. And I think one thing that Red Wing has always done really well, just speaking from my experience with Red Wing, is that relationship development. And I think like for a lot of makers, and as a shop owner, being able to talk to a maker and saying like what's not going well, and then being able to like work with stores, you know, because sometimes you'll bring in a brand and it like doesn't sell, or a store will never reorder from you again, and you have no idea why because you never got that feedback. And I think if you keep really open lines of communication, both as like a maker and a shop, and working with the shops that you're working with, of like, how are these things working out? Or I haven't seen a reorder from you in a while. You know, how are things selling? You're going to be able to like make more of those suggestions of how to sell the product, or send along things like Mel's like displays, knowing that her oils are best displayed, not strewn around. You know, you know how your product is going to look best. So those are really good points too that you made. And I felt like probably for the first time working with a brand, that Red Wing was kind of the first brand that I ever really had those open conversations with, because I was kind of shy as a shop owner to be like, this isn't working and I don't really know what to do, because you also don't want to offend people or makers. But I think you want to start to learn that stuff because it's mutually beneficial for everybody. So Red Wing was the first brand that made me feel like I could be like, this isn't working. Kyle, do you want to talk a little bit about some of your wholesale marketing? You also are a go-getter in getting your stuff into all sorts of even corporate accounts. So you want to talk a little about that, and even like your brick and mortar experience too? I think that might be helpful. I think most folks are probably kind of at that level on this call than pitching to Whole Foods, but
hey, no worries. Yeah, I'm a very cheesy sales guy. That's all it boils down to. Thank you, Becca. The one thing I tell folks all the time is just show up. I mean, I walk into a bunch of stores. I do in-store demos all the time where I'm not actually demoing anything. I'm just talking to folks about natural personal care and wellness. And letting them smell products, not even try them. But to the owners, managers, even like the higher end personnel in a grocery chain, if they see that you're showing up in their grocery stores, you know, once or twice a week, and you're putting the time, the effort, they're going to really support you. So yeah, I spend a lot of time on the road. I give away a ton of free products. So if I'm out and about, or if I'm trying to get a new account, I'll drop off a whole bag of goodies and say, hey, try these out. I'm going to come back or call on you in 2 weeks, see what you think. And if we can cut a deal or get on the shelf, that's great. Other things to mention that haven't been mentioned yet, there are a lot of great merchant catalogs out there. And what that is, these are catalogs that are intended for stores. The end consumer never sees them. We've got a bunch of great ones here in the Midwest, and I'm more than happy to share those with anybody that's interested. But those show up at shops and provide opportunities for shop owners and managers to buy products direct from those catalog services. Mel hit on it as well. Sometimes the best thing you can say is no. Turning down some accounts is a great idea. If you get in a situation where, let's say, maybe Costco calls on you and they have some type of ridiculous deal that you're not going to make a dime on, just walk away from it. It doesn't make sense. Same thing with folks that come at you that want to resell your products on a site like, say, Amazon. Amazon resellers are absolutely the worst. So in any type of arrangement you have, or if anyone contacts you and wants to buy your products or resell on Amazon, say no right away. So again, saying no is a big thing. And then finally, establishing an email list. Email lists are like gold. Every time we send out an email, we see an immediate injection of cash. So try to set up some type of service on your website or your social platforms where you're getting emails from folks all the time.
Awesome. Very helpful. Okay, last round of group questioning, and I'm just going to let people, I'm not calling on every single person, so you hop in if you want to talk about this, because I'd really like to get it to open questions, because I want people on the call here to feel engaged and get to ask some stuff. So if you have anything like specifically you'd like to say about the COVID-19 pandemic and how you pivoted, I know it's come up in a few just like off, Red Wing and the masks and the bandana masks, and a little bit of what Nate had brought up too. We've been doing this a little bit more. I mean, people are they're getting online, they're doing curbside pickups, they're doing stuff like that. Is there anything unique, particularly that your business is doing that might be helpful for some of the makers here, and even thinking about wholesale, what do those accounts look like versus your direct sales? What kind of changes you've been seeing there with brick and mortars not being open? So just anybody hop in. I'm not going to call you.
I can go ahead.
Oh, okay. I specialize in making quilted pillows, and with the whole COVID, I switched over to making masks because clearly masks are in dire need right now. And we got a surge of sales alone from that, which, it just came down to what's going on at the time and focusing in on, all right, how can I make some money doing this? Be of service to the community, be of service to even, the local hospitals, essential workers, anything like that, finding that need. And we even had wholesale orders come in just for that alone. So I'd say just searching for that area of what's going on around you and honing in right there.
Yeah, like everybody else, we've seen this dramatic shift in our sales distribution. Prior to COVID-19, I think I mentioned this to you back the other day, we were split 60-40, 60% of our sales online, 40% through brick and mortar. Last month, it was 95-5. Just crazy how the online stuff has exploded. The losses that we had at our brick and mortar partners were actually outpaced by our gains online. And I think that's something that's going to continue for quite a while here. We had our annual meeting with Whole Foods, and they told us they don't expect consumer behavior to return to quote unquote normal until Labor Day of 21. So that's a full year and a half away yet. So yeah, I think we're in this for the long haul, and it's great to have multiple channels that you can sell through. But I'm putting pretty much everything on our e-commerce channels right now. I think it's a great time for smaller companies to compete, because in terms of digital advertising, a lot of the bigger companies, the first thing they cut in tough times is their marketing budget. So ad prices on Facebook and Instagram and all these other platforms have dropped quite a bit. So taking advantage of those, and now is the time for a smaller company to really make some hay.
Hear that.
And I was going to say too, obviously Dune is closed. So we had an online store, but we really didn't have a ton of it. of anything really listed on there. So I really made a big go of getting all the things that I think would be like easy and affordable to ship online. And then I also, we created these little bundles, we call them joy bundles. And so when you check out, you can leave a note, we'll handwrite the note and we'll ship it directly to the person. And it's full of like little self-care items, a candle, a card, just like something to give someone just to like cheer them up. So we like group these little things together, and yeah, and our e-commerce was doing really well. It definitely started booming, and we're gonna keep the online store up and running, and we're gonna just keep putting more and more things into it. So it was we planned on doing it, but it was like, hey, it's now, you have to do it now.
Yes.
So
Yes.
it was the push we needed to get stuff online, and I think that's definitely the future too. The brick and mortar is still going to be the experience, but I think online sales are going to be a majority of where the sales are too. So also like making your online store, the branding and the feel and the vibe and the photography and the shipping and the unboxing, also the experience too. So just being conscious of that too, I think.
Great. I am going to just move it to questions because we're kind of losing some people here. I'm also noticing. So I had some questions that were asked online, but maybe because I don't know if those people are even on here, we'll go to what the chat questions were. So there's one chat question, and then Adam, is it cool if I just ask this?
Yeah, sure thing.
So this was a follow-up question for the makers. What hourly rate do you charge for your retail costs, and how has this changed as you've grown? So what is like your rate essentially that you bake into your to what you do? Serene, do you want to maybe? I feel like
yeah. So like for beadwork, I usually I pay myself like $15 to $20 an hour for my beadwork. For my metalwork, it's about $30 to $50 an hour.
And then you bake that.
Yeah.
Wholesale.
Yeah, and again, it depends on how many solder joints. It depends on, am I making bezels? Am I setting stones? Am I hand cutting? I mean, you know, I want to pay myself a living wage. I think as a maker that if you're doing it full time, you deserve a living wage. And again, not everybody can do what you do. So, you know, charge accordingly. Yeah.
Absolutely. Does anybody else want to talk about your rate?
I think I mean, it's gonna shift a little bit, but I feel like as a maker, you're gonna cut, I don't want to say this the right way, but if you have employees, I feel like you're almost gonna, I don't know where the balance is. Do you let the employees go to keep your costs so that the business and stuff stays afloat, or do you know, provide for the employee and take less yourself? So there's definitely a fine balance. It's just us personally, but I work for another business, and it's definitely a tricky thing.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, I mean, I think Becca, we talked about before about how at my company, I'm actually the lowest paid employee. And I dig that. I love that. I'd much rather take care of my folks than take care of myself. So yeah, there's two different ways to look at it. And I'm much more employee focused than focused on my own financial gain.
Definitely for the brick and mortar, I am minimum wage. Like $10 an hour is what I take home for the store. Literally.
Yeah. Hear it.
Yep.
Hear that.
I make more money for myself making jewelry.
Yeah. Here are a couple of questions. I'll just do one question from the internet, and then people who are, well, actually, no, we're not going to do that. So if you're here in this chat and have some questions, just unmute yourself and ask, or sorry, Adam, or like raise your hand, I guess.
Yeah, so if you want to pop open that participants tab, so down on the bottom, you've got a participants tab where you can raise your hand. So raise your hand if you've got a question. I see that Christopher, you've got a question. Do you still have that? I'll unmute you here and you can ask that.
Awesome, thank you. So I'm an amateur photographer in Eau Claire. Photography and videography, I'm trying to move more towards video. But photography as well, I guess this is related to. So I have two questions. I'm going to sort of bring them into one. Generally with photography or videography, this kind of goes towards pricing. There's been three main pricing models that I've seen in the past. Either people will pay per photo that they decide to keep, people will pay per hour for a photographer, or people will pay just for the day, a base pay through the day. I'm wondering, for anyone who has hired a photographer, maybe it doesn't apply to everybody on this panel, but for anyone who has hired a photographer, what pay models, I guess, have you paid somebody in the past, and what's the most attractive to you as somebody looking to hire a photographer? And also, after having what you would consider professional photos or professional advertising, once you've had that, what kind of increases in your sales have you experienced? You know, how has your business grown because of that, I guess, better advertising, more professional look?
So folks that have worked with photographers, if you want to chime in.
I can chime in really quick. So my sister is a photographer, and I work with her quite a lot. She does the majority of my photography for my lookbooks for my jewelry, and product photography and things for Dune. So she does a different a pay thing. So there's a session fee, and then there's a product fee. So you pay an upfront session fee, or like, and I guess it depends too on what you want to photograph. If you want to photograph like people and weddings, or if you want to do commercial photography like products and things like that too. She also, for products and photography, she kind of has, what is it called? Kind of, if you book one product photography session, it's in a month, it's one price. If you book two, it's this price. So it's kind of like a recurring, you know, so you want to keep the photographer on hand, and you get a break for how many photo shoots you book in a month. And then for her shooting people like seniors or portraits and stuff like that, there's a session fee and then a product fee. And so the product fee would be like your prints and your digitals. And so you the photographer can make money on the session fee, and then you can also make money with overhead on, or the margins on products if they buy prints. Does that make sense? So that's another, I guess, structure that you could use for photography.
Yeah, we've actually, yeah, we've worked with a number of different photographers. So basically we've worked with individuals and boutiques. I'm strongly opposed to agencies because the fees are absolutely crazy. One of the things we do, we pay per image that we use, and we give direction, but basically let the photographers have kind of free reign. So we're more into lifestyle pictures right now, where it's not just a product, but also some other component to make it not seem like it's so adsy. But yeah, we're definitely paying per picture. And we use a bunch of different photographers because everyone has a different unique eye and a different spin on things. We have been a little bit fortunate in the past. We've had some photographers reach out to us that have actually wanted to shoot our stuff for free to build their portfolio to bring in more business. So if you're looking to start a business, get it off the ground, you might want to offer that. Just say, hey, I'll do some free shots for you, build my portfolio, and perhaps there's an opportunity to work down the line, because I know a lot of businesses would take advantage of that.
Cool. Other questions from the audience? And use the little feature Adam's got.
Yeah, so Samantha.
Hi guys, thanks for this. This has been super helpful. I think I've taken about 6 or 7 pages of notes. I just started a couple months ago. I do very small embroidery decor. And so I'm sort of wondering, you guys all have a very diverse portfolio of products. And I guess I'd like to sort of direct my question to Cire and Pasture and Co. How did you guys decide to deviate from your initial product, and what did that look like, your thought process, and did you get feedback from your wholesalers, et cetera, kind of delving into diversity in your products?
I definitely decided to when I first started, it was just necklaces. Obviously with jewelry, you can do like necklaces and earrings and rings and all those things. But it was kind of trial and error. And I also really wanted to set myself apart by creating my own niche. I feel like when you are a maker and you can create your own niche of a product or your new take on a product, that's kind of how you set yourself apart. And again, it's definitely a lot of trial and error, and it could be like the same product but trying it in different sizes or different color variations or semi-custom, and just getting kind of creative in how, and the audience will definitely give you feedback. You'll hear feedback, and you'll see it in your sales too. But I think just keeping your core product always there, and then experimenting kind of around it, and what sticks, you kind of go off that, and then that becomes part of your core, and then you can experiment around that, and it just kind of grows. And I think those things take time, definitely. Hopefully that's helpful.
Totally agree with what Cire said. Testing out what your main passion piece would be, throwing that out there, seeing how that resonates with customers. I know, like, I've even kind of steered a little bit away from what I like have a passion to do, and it didn't work out for me. So I kind of had to go back and really ground myself with, like, I feel like this is me. I don't see so much of this out there yet. So the individuality is really key there. At least for me it was. And I think that's kind of a good way to resonate sales, is if you go standing behind your product, if you feel strongly about it, I think people will see that behind it.
Who's the company in the cities that we so I wanted to say something that I can't remember the name of the business, but they're a clothing company in Minneapolis. The name's, I know the name, I just can't think of it.
Describe it. So then
they make women's clothes, custom order. I think you've had some of their products. I think Packwith. Okay.
Packwith Designs.
She said something a long time ago that really resonated to us, or to me, and that's kind of stuck with me. She says, like, she started making what she thought other people wanted, and she was unhappy, and her sales were bad. And then as soon as she made like what she wanted and what she cared about, her sales went up, because it was people seeing the passion that she put into it. Made it what it was, you know what I'm saying? And then what I would say is, like, if you have something you're passionate about, what we're learning is, so I sell on eBay for my parents' business, and then she's a full-time mother of 2 kids. So we're still growing and learning these things. But I like what Becca said is get feedback from your store owner, people who you're doing wholesale with and stuff like that. Get feedback from them, which is a good lesson for us as well, because ask them what's selling, what Kat said too, what's selling in their store, and then what feedback are they getting from their customers. And then say you have a core product, like say we have a quilted pillow, maybe try, if the quilted pillow price point's too high, maybe take quilting and then put it into a different product at a lower price point. And if that takes off, then like it's proof that that idea is good. It's just maybe your price point wasn't right. So then there's so many factors to it. It's trial and error, and it's doing what you're passionate about and then believing in that long enough to go through some of that trial and error. So, but it can be embarrassing. Sometimes you feel embarrassed, or you put something out there and you take it down or whatever. But a lot of that's just being okay to fail, because the internet's so fast too. Like, be honest, like people aren't going to remember half the time. To just keep going, learn quick. Like,
and make sure that what you're making makes you happy, and that you're passionate about it. Because the minute you lose it and you start making for other people, like, can you imagine making that 1,000,000 times just to make money? No, you have to do what you love, and that shows too. Like, do you want to use it? Do you want to wear it? Is it you? Because it's art, It's
Even
so don't lose sight of that, no matter what.
Because like it started, the Kyle's thing. It might not. I mean, it's an art what you're doing, but it might not be art. People might not consider it artistic, but you did it because it meant something to your family. One, and then you built upon that, and then it turned into this. So there's a lot of that behind it, which
is awesome.
And then like Cat with Red Wing, there's so much nostalgia and stuff behind that as well. So that's all I got.
Excellent. Well, it doesn't look like we have any other hands raised. I want to make sure that we are respectful of our panelists' time here tonight. But Becca, did you have any other final questions or anything that you wanted to throw in, or any other final thoughts? That
Some zingers at the end here. No, I really appreciate all of your time. And I know folks were on and off, it's great that this is being recorded. And I think that it was super valuable, everything you guys had to say. I think that, and a testament from what some other folks have said on here too, like Samantha taking notes. You know, I really appreciate you guys sharing this. It is like it's a hard thing to learn this stuff for some reason, both as like makers and shop owners and when you're starting to do this. So we do have one more question.
Yeah.
Okay, we have one more question, so I don't have to come up with one. So great. So Patricia, why don't you ask your question?
Okay, yeah, thanks a lot. I appreciate everybody being here tonight, so thank you so much, and hi back to Pasture Company and a few others in the crowd that I do recognize, so fun to see the local people. My comment, though, is to consider about the e-commerce part, and do any of you have suggestions perhaps on the best or the on a good suggestive platform for e-commerce? What web hosting or place should you put your time in? Because there's, you know, trying to do an Etsy store or trying to do a Square store or have your own website that you do off of Wix, I should say, or something like that, or SquareDaddy or wherever. I mean, or is it just best to hire a professional to do your own? I'm just curious about that.
Can I take this one? I got a whole bunch of stuff to say.
Yeah.
All right. First off, Shopify. If you're serious about e-commerce, that's the platform you want to be on. Our own horror stories. We started on, what was it, Squarespace way back when, or Square, whatever it was. That's great for shops on Main Street that want to have a presence and have walk-in traffic. But if you're looking to actually have an e-commerce platform where you can sell, Shopify. The analytics alone are well worth the price. You can see your sales daily, weekly, monthly, annually. You can see how things are trending. The information is absolutely incredible. Further down the road, if you're looking to export products, there's very easy translation services to Spanish, French, German, whatever else. So yeah, Shopify is definitely the platform you should use if you're serious.
Okay, thanks.
I'm going to just hop in with one thing really quick. So the Red Letter Grant, which was mentioned a little bit on here, and I know you're familiar, Patricia, we have been hosting some different like workshops about like building all sorts of stuff, and we hosted a Squarespace Basics one, which, and Shopify, I use Shopify, so I also love Shopify, but I also think, you know, for a lot of folks that are really learning, that's a very intuitive program as well, and might be something, I think it's a workshop we're going to offer again, so keep your eyes peeled, and somebody like kind of walks through that. What I think you'll find is that it's best to use one of those platforms than like an Etsy or something, because you're getting like, and for folks who've used Etsy, I think they trim, you know, some of the sales off of your stuff, you know, as far as like if you're selling things and you get more directly your profit. I mean, everybody has fees and that stuff, but I think, you know, the templates and stuff that like Squarespace or Shopify has are really intuitive and user-friendly, and you'd be surprised. I would say it's always helpful to have somebody else do it if that's not your strong suit. And there's some places in Eau Claire that I could refer you to, of like people that kind of help with even just like those templated websites. But that's probably going to be your best bet, because then the maintenance on that too, if you were going to get a completely customized website built, it would be really hard for you as a maker to be able to update that too. So it's kind of like finding a sweet spot where you're not doing Etsy where it looks like Etsy, and you're not doing a crazy customized website, but like some of these kind of, you know, push and play kind of things are really helpful. So
I'll jump in real quick. We use Squarespace as well. I understand what Kyle's saying if you're going real volume, because my other business, I understand. But Squarespace, for at least the smallest we are right now, works well, and we use Shippo to ship from, so that those two together seem to work good. And there's Squarespace does have a ton of their own tutorials on site for teaching you stuff. So like, and it's like $30 a month for a store where you can sell your products. Like if you just want to get in the game, like that's a good place to start. But if you are looking bulk, I mean, I've heard so much about Shopify. I don't personally use it now, but podcasts, blogs, everybody says it's the platform. So.
Shopify is nice too when you have a brick and mortar store because it marries the two platforms, which not a lot of the POS systems, and I learned that the hard way. When
I learned that the hard way too. So I'll be moving to Shopify because I'm on Squarespace.
Okay, clarify
Isn't
that.
that fun when you oversell stuff in the store and then you have a potter that just can't make it in a day, you know? Ship on over your stuff.
Yeah, I'm going to be reworking a lot of things before we open the brick and mortar again. I got a long road ahead of me.
So I have a question with that. Do you have a system that you're saying, so you have a system in your store that you inventory all your products with, and then that
so I have Square for the store, and then I have a Squarespace website.
Okay.
And I'm just doing it the old-fashioned way on a notebook right now. But so I'm not putting any makers online. It's just the products we own so that I can keep track of it.
What's hard, Nate, is it doesn't, like, when you sell something on one platform, it's not letting the other platform know. So it's just got to,
it's not taking it out of inventory.
I understood that. I'm saying, like, what system are you using that marries with Shopify?
Shopify is where it's at.
Shopify holds all your personal inventory. It's not two platforms you're putting together, your personal inventory and Shopify. You're just putting all your inventory into Shopify. Is that what you're saying?
So yeah, everything, like just everything would go in there and just one system.
Okay, yeah, so you're saying it's one platform, all right.
Yeah, which is super nice, especially when you're working with makers who are, can't just whip something around and shoot it back out to you in a day if you oversell it.
Okay.
So.
Kat, did you have something that you wanted to jump in with there?
No, I guess my other concern is I'm feeling like I'm spreading myself too thin because I do have Square and I do have a Square store, but it's never advertised, so I don't really see a lot of traffic on it, but I do actually have a lot of that inventory and so forth shown in there. But I have Amazon Handmade and I do Etsy, and it just feels like it's so many, and I would just like to just focus on one. So, but if I had my own website, that probably would be easier. But I'm a writer and I like to blog, and those things wouldn't give me any opportunity to add a blog to them, do they? Shopify?
They would actually.
Oh.
Yep, you can build that in there. Yeah, there's a function to add that for.
Right, because some of like I've done those local coloring books and I've done the novel, and I would like to be able to share little bits of the writing from my novel that I've done and the novel that I'm doing now to help build up so that when I have the launch of the second novel, I've built a better base, so to speak. So I just need a
standalone website would probably be the best for you then. And you can keep those other platforms, but it's just the maintenance of making sure your inventory is updated everywhere.
Okay.
I do want to echo what Kyle and Becca said about the analytics, is that if you're in a place where you are ready to start wholesaling, those analytics are very important. When you're a maker and when you're a shop owner, because you're there every day, you really think that you're able to remember everything that you sell and how much of it, and you don't. You just don't. You're doing so many things that you don't remember these things. And so it's so important to be able to pull those numbers so that you can share it with your reps, or you can share it with your employees. You have that right there, because that is something that we reps ask for all the time from our buyers. Can you sell me your sell-through report? That looking at those numbers helps us help your business. And I can't tell you how many times we've asked buyers to do that, and they're like, well, I think I sold 5 last month, and like I'll have to look, and they never get back to you. And those are the accounts that we really struggle on how to cater to your business with. So that's always super, super helpful when you're looking to grow your business.
I'll just chime in quick and say, piggybacking on that, Kat, from your sales and analytics and how you're doing that, even when I was doing more of the actual events and I was selling in person, like craft shows or farmers markets, right as I was getting started, I actually created, and if you haven't noticed yet, I like data. I like getting in there and doing that kind of a thing. But I created like a full-on sheet that showed me every single product that I had, my start inventory for the sale, and hourly what I sold. So that way I could track the success of each event that I went to. And on that same event sheet, I filled it out for every single event. So I knew which ones I should go to next or again, and was it successful or not. I did things like location, what was the day, what was the time, so start and end time, and then I also did what was the weather like, because that was a huge indicator for me. Like if it was a really warm, great outdoor event, I knew I was going to have better sales. I also thought about what was going on that weekend that was also bringing in more people into that community or into that area that was an attraction point. And then as I got asked, do you want to do this again next year? I knew, because I could tell you exactly which events were my money makers and which ones weren't. And then I knew how much product I should be bringing to the next event as well. But it helped me from an inventory perspective. And then I also had that all set up on my Square app, so I could take the cards and do everything, and all of my payments were like that anyway. But it was really helpful just as a picture to see a snapshot, like, holy crap, I sold a lot of honey face masks and, you know, from noon to 1. That is a busy time period. Why is that? Those types of things. But those sort of trending things, in addition to checking all the analytics on your website, there are ways, if you don't have that yet, that you can be doing that at those face-to-face events that are really going to help you gauge where you should be going next and what you should be doing.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much to all of our panelists. I've dropped all of their info in the chat here, so feel free to follow them on Instagram, like them on Facebook, check out their websites and see what they're all about, because not only do they have the great information that they've shared with all of us here, but they have actual products too. So be sure to check those out and support our local makers. So I'm going to drop one last time in the chat the Artful Eau Claire Facebook page. Make sure that you're liking that and following it this week to see some great local content that's going on and great local events. We've got a downtown window gallery walk, so a lot of places have set up art exhibits in their windows that we can enjoy at a distance. But again, thank you for taking your time tonight. Thank you for popping in to join us. And just a reminder, this was recorded and we'll be sending it out for you to have. So if you didn't get to take 6 pages of notes tonight, you can feel free to jump back in and take 6 pages of notes later. So with that, have a great evening, and we hope to see you back for some more events. And thank you again to Becca for moderating. It was awesome. So thank you, everybody.
Bye, y'all.
Thank you guys. Happy to be a part.
Bye.